ready and waiting for us in Niagara Land. And well, we're here every morning between 7 and 8. Myself, Peter Giblett, and him, Dave Wheeler, who's off grabbing a coffee right now. And we're here to kind of have a light-hearted look at the news and other things, and particularly those elements that actually have an impact upon Niagara Falls. That doesn't necessarily mean that the story's about Niagara Falls, but things, nationally and internationally that might well have an impact on us, and and also in addition to that, stories that are actually a very general, good and general interest, things that we need to all know about. Okay, so this is a horror story in a way. So it's this is a story that comes from Metro News from the UK, and they're basically saying temperatures in some parts of Russia has plummeted as low as minus 55, and basically what has happened is Putin has ordered prisons to turn off heating in order to force inmates to sign up for the front line. And his plan is to replenish the army with murderers, killers, and other dangerous criminals.
Well,
rather like your fanciful Dirty Dozen, eh?
Well, yeah, I have problems with that because
it's a basic human
right. I'm not
yeah.
sure they want that type of person. They're saying murderers, criminals. Of course, they can get some pretty hardened criminals in the army, but they want somebody they can control, and they're worried about people that they'll stab each other. If a criminal has a chance to escape, trade sides, they're looking for those criminals on the edge, maybe they've got locked up, but they'll give them an opportunity basically to get out of there if they go fight war. They're running out of men just like the Ukraine is.
Yep.
And basically, I wouldn't doubt that Russia, that the West will be sending mercenaries into Ukraine not long from now. Remember that the Ukrainians are pressing their population into a draft basically as well, and hundreds of thousands of both Russians and Ukrainian young men have fled the area. I think 700,000 or something Russian young men split as fast as they possibly could when the war began, and it was pretty much the same for the Ukrainian, probably in the same degree of persons. A lot of young men just grabbed whatever they had and took off because they didn't want to fight for an army that was full of corruption. And they know that anybody who has money or wealth or anything would avoid the front lines, just like the American senators did. The senators' sons did in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, and of course. Okay, one of Olga Romanova, who's the director of Russia Behind Bars human rights NGO, has said that the aim of doing this is to force the convicts to go to war, and in particular, she talks about Denis Alexandrovich Zobo, who was sentenced in 2017 to 21 years in maximum security jail for murdering 3 people over a 9-month period. So he was a serial killer in the making.
Well, he could be just a total badass. He could be just involved with drugs and gangs and all that.
Yeah.
Remember, the article I'm reading is a Daily Mirror, and they're not exactly the most reliable source, are they? They like to embellish things and flower them up and hyperbole and all that. Isn't that pretty much what the Daily Mirror is?
The Mirror's, but the Mirror's not as bad as the Sun. It's a bit more, it's left leaning, but it has a bit more. The Sun is basically just any story to scandalize anything in the UK. The Mirror is somewhat the same, but not always.
I think if you go back to the Second World War or the First World War, I think you're going to find just about in every country, in France and Britain and Germany, they went to the prisons and they offered the prisoners shortened terms if they went off to war. I think it's a thing that countries do when they're running out of men, particularly.
Everybody's heard the story of the Dirty Dozen anyway, the ones that were sent to Germany, allegedly. I don't know how true that is, but it does say on that particular story that it was based on true events. But it's not something I've ever really heard of before, other than on that one film.
Well, look at
but it does.
I think it's just a thing. It's just a thing. If you've got a bunch of men and you could put a uniform on them and send them out there, Russia's running out of men. So what they've done is we found out last week, I think it was, where they were taking people from Nepal, young people from Nepal, offering them work, and their work was put a gun on them and send them into the front. And that's just what's going to happen. And I don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine because they're running out of young men. They don't have any young men left. Only the ones that escape. Now, what's going to happen is the people in Ukraine now are going to look to all these young men that escaped all over Europe and North America and say, hey, what are you doing over there? You should be coming back to Ukraine to fight this war. And they don't want to go fight a war that's never going to end. Yeah. They're not going to fight a war they trog around in. That's what I mean. Pretty soon, the whole thing's going to go over to two armies of mercenaries.
Yeah, exactly.
Russians will have their mercenaries, and Ukrainians will have their mercenaries, and we'll be spending scads and scads and scads of money feeding the Ukrainian war effort. Canada's already committed $8 billion to it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's for sure, and it's a clear human rights abuse here, but but again, it doesn't surprise me. This sort of attitude does not surprise me about Putin.
Well, yeah, but I don't really buy the fact that they're turning off the heat. I think in Russia things don't work, and when the heat goes down, seriously, like a lot of times they're not built that well. I have a feeling that the heat is not an unusual thing for the heat to go off in a prison or something like that. And they're not going to be too concerned about the prisoners' welfare because they're prisoners. And if the heat goes off, someone can say, well, I know that the Russians have been in those prisons when it's sunny out and the weather is good, and they're offering those prisoners, jobs on the front line.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, but again, somebody like Olga Romanova, who's the director of Russia Behind Bars human rights NGO, it was her group's responsibility to look at things like that, right?
Well, sure, and I don't doubt that there's a prison here or there. I don't know if they're saying Putin was the one that ordered that the temperature be turned down in Russian prisons to motivate people to sign up for the army. I doubt that very much. I think probably Putin said to his lieutenants, say, look, get me some troops. I don't care where you got them. And somebody says, okay, the prison, and maybe one or two of those prisoners who think they're going to catch some extra coin by signing up a few may have turned down the heat in their prison, so that they can make some more money, getting recruits in quotation marks. But I don't think Putin himself said turn down, and that's what they're saying here.
How would you prove that anyway, Dave? How would you possibly prove it?
No, it's just basically Putin gives an order: get me
Yeah,
some guys out of prison,
I know.
and whoever's underneath them will use any means possible to
Yeah,
do that.
nobody's. He's probably said, "Get us guys, be
Specifically, if
inventive
it's going
about
to
it."
improve
Yeah,
them, improve their
yeah. He's
status.
telling his lieutenants to go be inventive about how he gets guys. You know, which then opens up prisons. Anyway, so yeah. But this story has been Metro News has actually put this out there a couple of weeks ago. I caught this when they were talking about -30 temperatures, and we didn't talk about it. I put it on our thing. Glad you got to see one on the Daily Mirror. As I said, the Mirror's a left-leaning version of the Sun, right? But usually has a bit more, a little bit more credibility insofar as they check their news stories. They care whether they get sued
Well,
or
yeah,
not.
but yeah, like I can't like definitely. So what's the title? Putin turns off the heat in the prisons to get more. No, Putin didn't do that.
Yeah,
Putin didn't do
yeah.
that. He's got
No,
no.
I know.
He's
I
got
know.
his hands full with
Yeah.
every other kind of evil machinations he's up to. I don't think he's got time to work over the prisoners and turn down their heat.
Yeah. Again, though, with titles, you know that newspapers pick titles that sell.
Exactly, and that is the situation we have here.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think we're pretty well trying to evolve past this. I don't think I see a lot of really good news out there nowadays. Some good journalism. I think that kind of stuff is a bit of a past. The problem is when you do that, you lose trust. You lose trust. So, okay, obviously the Russians are making matters. You can really believe that Russians are making matters worse for prisoners so that they'll motivate them to sign up for war.
Okay, so Mike, just a quick question before we move on to our next story. Mike Cushman has basically said the Ontario Land Tribunal is going to be hearing the Cytec Canada case versus Niagara City on Tuesday, January the 16th at 8 a.m. At 10 a.m. I mean, so this is the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the irony here is I don't think I can actually. I would love to be able to watch this one because I want to actually see what's going on in the Land Tribunal anyway, because it's an area I practice in. But the link is down there. All right, so the link is down in the comments underneath. I can't put it up on display because it won't mean a thing. It won't mean a thing to you, but if you want to watch that, Mike has added the link beneath. All right, so go have a look. That's today. Yeah, 10 a.m. today. Yeah, I'm busy today. This morning, I've got urgent work that needs urgent files that need filing this week. I cannot waste a moment this week.
Well, that's pretty good. And believe me, Cytec is the one in the driver's seat here, because if Niagara Falls has said we're going to use that land, Cytec has warned them against it. If the tribunal comes in and says they can use that land, Cytec is miles and miles away from responsibility if something does happen, because they have fully warned everybody, and everybody from the tribunal to Niagara Falls City Council, the Niagara region, knows all about the potential dangers there. So if they go ahead and build something there, and God forgive, they have a spillover and people get hurt, Cytec will be, look, I told you, they washed their hands of it. Look, we try to tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Moving on. Niagara Centre NDP MPP Jeff Birch is expressing deep frustration over the planned closing of the Welland Service Ontario office and its relocation to the Staples store located beside Seaway Mall. So this change raises serious concerns about residents' access to government services, what Birch has said in a letter to Doug Ford last Friday. So this deal with Staples is yet another example of your government sole-sourced contract that appears to benefit wealthy insiders with connections into the PC party. That's Birch's allegation, right? So the Welland Staples store, which is located at 800 Niagara Street, basically has displayed signs of pointing to an under construction kiosk area where they'll be setting up the Service Ontario counters.
Well, it's going to be a whole lot of hitches too. The single source thing is something that bothers me. Why just Staples stores? Is it just Staples stores? I thought up in the northern communities they were going to go into whatever facility is there. This is like for instance, this is the Service Ontario over here shares the office space with the CAA, so they're already sharing the office. Like there's Service Ontario right beside it CAA,
and they share staff as well.
What?
They share staff. Some of the staff that work for Service Ontario also double up under CAA.
So there they have it. You have kind of a symbiotic relationship there. To take things and put them in existing stores, renting space in an existing store where you can close it or open it as you will or change it, is probably a good idea. It will probably reduce the cost to the taxpayer. My problem is that they're doing it in Staples stores, and I wonder why that is. And the NDP, of course, have accused the Conservatives of looking for buddies, looking for their pals and whoever else. Well, Staples gave us lots of money for last vote. Guy who owns Staples owns a lot of money will give us a lot of money for our election, so we'll give them the contract.
It's an easy allegation to make, very hard to prove.
It might not be that hard to prove, but I really don't like them to make that kind of accusations myself, unless they do have proof.
Yeah.
But that's actually I'm only reporting what they have said is that they're looking, the Conservatives are looking to pay back friends. Now, is it a good idea? If it reduces the cost to the taxpayer, yes, it is. If it is efficient, if it's going to be into a crowded Staples store where you can't get a seat or you got to, you know what I mean? You got to fight some way or another.
And the worst aspect of this is if your existing store is already got hour-long queues when it's got a full set of people working it, and the new store will have half the numbers working it, then the wait times are going to go up, and those people sitting in the chairs waiting for their turn won't necessarily be shopping. They'll be cluttering up the space.
Yeah, they could be, but I have a feeling that they're probably mostly just going in and getting license plates out, but maybe they will walk around and buy a trinket here or there. Staples is a very high price store.
Yeah, I don't doubt they will.
But anyway, look, but they say it's Staples only. I'm not so sure that is, but Staples does have what Staples has are rather big stores that can be used, that can be sorted out in a way in which there could be a room enough to rent to Service Ontario. I would like to see the costs on there. I'd like to see how much it's saving the Ontario taxpayer. And remember that the federal government has done this all over the place, particularly in Avondale stores. They had a deal. They must have had a deal with Avondale stores because it was Avondale stores where you found sub post offices.
or Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they had deals with Shoppers Drug Mart and Avondale to have post offices in them.
Yeah,
that's the federal government, and I don't really remember hearing much about the feds, trying to sort of grease the palms that fed them when they did that. Plus, also, we would, if you look at the federal buildings that were around, we do have a big post office downtown, a federal building down there. Well, that's big, and at one time it was probably very useful to have it. Is it that useful now?
Yeah, how much
is it the way that mail is moved now? Do you need a place like that?
How much of that federal building is actually in use? The postal sorting bit, I believe, is still in use, but the the main post office itself probably is not. Now, here's the irony, of course, is that if you used to go into the post office in Queen Street, there'd usually be 2 or 3 people there on any given day. Whereas in the postal section of the Victoria Shoppers Drug Mart, there's usually one.
Yeah.
And she takes her lunch at 12:30, and sorry if she's at lunch when you're going to drop your mail off.
Yeah. So the service might not be as good in a corner store, but it is close. It is close. You don't have to go all the way downtown. You just go to I used to go to the Avondale that was on St. Paul and Ryle, but that Avondale was there for decades, and now it's closed up. So and one of the first harbingers of its closing was the fact that the post office was closing inside, and it did.
Yeah. Mind you, one of the things that would be said about it is, for example, in rural England, they've always, for a long time, and in fact, not just rural England, but sometime in smaller towns, smaller cities, smaller towns, they've actually run post offices out of the same type of thing, convenience stores, right? So the convenience store, basically what it meant for the convenience store is the owner of the convenience store, being a post office worker, would draw a salary, and therefore they often wouldn't put the prices up as much as the normal convenience store would.
So that's rather unfair, isn't it, though, eh? It's rather unfair to the other convenience store just down the street.
Yeah.
Where
I get it.
You know what I mean? So
whereas the other,
I think actually what the government is doing here, and what the federal government has done, basically they're looking to reduce the cost and improve the service. So if you have a building like Staples where people are going to go anyway, where everybody knows it,
well, and
it's usually closer than a station, then you can go to Service Ontario in a Staples building, because they're big and they can house a Service Ontario building. And if Staples closes, then they'll find somebody else. Maybe they'll go into Canadian Tire buildings, or who knows, or mix them up.
Well, the other thing is
they can't mix them up and put them here and there.
Yeah. The other thing about this is, Dave, that this might be just the first of them in Welland. But for example, one of the things about Staples is it's open 7 days a week. That's not to say the Service Ontario thing is open 7 days a week, but maybe that means that Service Ontario now opens between 9 and 3 on Saturday as well.
Service Ontario is, as far as I could tell, it's a private outfit that works for the government.
Yeah. No,
and so so the Service Ontario would be staffed with, I think it's a private company basically that I don't think there are government employees basically.
Yeah, I'm not saying they were, but I'm just saying that might mean that they actually have the Service Ontario counter open on a Saturday. Probably not a Sunday, but maybe a Saturday.
Probably not, because they have to do the computer thing and register you through computer. And if they're shutting down the ones, the main ones where people were, I don't know, whatever, but probably not. My guess is.
But actually, I have to say, how when you recently, no, you probably not, because you walked there. It's that place is within walking distance. But how many people nowadays are actually were buying their renewal stickers for their cars online?
I was doing that, and Service Ontario is a 2-minute walk for me.
Yeah.
I was doing that because I look outside and there'd be a big long lineup. I figured, oh God, I'll do it online.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
And it was delivered to my mailbox, which is, 10 seconds down the hall rather than 2 minutes down a road to get into the line and wait.
All right. Okay. So moving on. There's a story here that was put out last week, which is called Golden Years and Lonely Sunsets, and talks about Ron Sims, who visits his neighborhood supermarket once a day, every day, but not necessarily to buy food. His daily trip to the grocery store is one of the few times he gets to interact with other people. So he tries socializing with customers and cashiers and sparking up conversation, giving them a smile. So basically what they're saying is, as you get older, a lot of people are actually losing, because they're in home, they're in homes, etc. They've lost their independence. They've lost their they've become lonely and, sad and lonely and alone.
Well, we live in a situation in a new phase of our civilization. Every time there's we now are in a situation where not long before this, our civilization is threatened by overabundance. We're getting too fat. We're getting all kinds of diabetes because we're taking too much sugar. We're eating lots of fast food, and we have abundance. What was so that was once so anyone many years ago would have thought, is that a threat to civilization, overabundance of its population? Well, it certainly did seem so. It affected our health terribly. Now, the other thing is, we are so independent, capable of independence, that we are too independent, and we do not interact with as many people as we should. We're social creatures. And what we're doing is we're hunkering down in our hovels, and we're not coming out and talking or interacting with people, and that's not really a great thing to do. You need human interaction, because that's who we are. We are a social animal. So we're not comfortable being totally alone. There are some people are good. My mom was an only child, and she spent many, many long hours alone when she was a kid. She has no problem being alone. She's pretty good with it. She could be alone for days and days. When she used to go up to the cottage, she hardly talked to anyone, but she liked it that way. But other people don't. That's not the case with most people. Most people have to have some sort of social interaction.
I actually like both. There are times when I can get on and do some thinking, do some writing, and I can be quite happily doing that all alone. And there are other times when I need that social interaction.
Yeah. And what this article is saying, that among seniors, that loneliness is being imposed upon them. We don't have as big as families as we did before.
Yeah.
We have 1 or 2 kids, if we have any. So what you're doing is this generation that's coming up is going to be a very lonely generation, because so many of them decided not to have children. And even if you do have children, they get to spread out all over the place, not like before.
Well, I was going to say, you got one kid who's in another continent or something like that, right?
That's right. And if you look at the old families, there was a position for everybody. There was old grandma and grandpa, and old grandma may have been in the kitchen, and grandpa might have been doing something, and there was always a place for them.
Yeah.
They had the head of the table. The old grandma,
Grandpa
grandpa
was
had the
doing
head
the
of the table.
woodwork,
And it was
right?
mom and dad and all the kids and the
Yeah.
cousins and everybody. They all came together. They all helped each other out. But now, because we have families that are small and the families spread out all over the place, then we don't have that same interaction. And if you look at all the new Canadians that come into the country, what do you notice about them all? Basically, they're all the Serbians hang out with Serbians, the Sikhs hang out with Sikhs. They have a community. They have a community among themselves. But
Yeah.
it's like Canadians like you and me, or more likely me, because I was born here, that find ourselves in a situation where those cultural attachments are long gone or whittled down, or most of us are multicultural backgrounds, so we don't have a cultural place to go. You know what I mean? You may be able to join a church group or something like that, but those things are not there available. When people go when key clubs or something like that, which are a kind of a Kiwanis for kids, what they'll do for part of their projects is just go into seniors' houses and talk to people because you got nobody to talk to.
Well, the irony here is that this is a gentleman who lives in a senior's home, and living in a senior's home, he's basically saying that he goes out to the supermarket because he's lonely.
Yeah, that's nothing new. That's
Yeah.
nothing new. And look, one of the most one
But
of the
the
most
idea behind
go ahead.
some of these senior homes was to, if you clump 100 seniors together, they can socialize.
Maybe, but the doesn't always work that way. But what look here, one of the most common stories about a handyman, right? You get old folks that can't fix the sink anymore or their taps or whatever, so they call on a handyman or somebody they know. They're going to give them a couple of bucks to fix the tap or this or that, right? So some enterprising young man goes and shows up, and what he does, he doesn't end up getting to do the job at all because they won't stop talking to him.
Yeah.
And he leaves after 2 hours without turning a wrench. But that doesn't matter. Come back tomorrow. Fix it tomorrow. Well, I mean, I just wasted 2 hours. Well, we'll pay you. Come back tomorrow. Yeah, you hear that story
Yeah. Yeah.
often and often.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you cannot. People go in to fix somebody's wiring or whatever, so or help them move around furniture or something. Can't get at the job because the people in there will not let them start it because they've got all kinds of things to tell them and want to talk to them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've heard that story. I've heard that story many, many times. And you don't have to be that old. You don't have to be in your 80s or 90s to be, to be going through that. And but the question is, of course, as you get older, partners, partners die, don't they?
Partners do die, definitely, and if there was a guy in this building whose partner died, and then I mean, then I used to see him. I used to go walk around at night sometimes, except what I just do. Right, it's just a habit I had
Yeah.
a lot of times, particularly in the summer. I'd go for long walks. I'd have to be careful about skunks, but that's all. Well, I would see that when a certain fella here who lived in this building, when his wife died, I'd see him wandering around at night out there because he's got and then his whole life collapsed basically, and I think it got salvaged a bit when he went to a retirement home. But before that, it was tanking down bad, and that's just because we nobody to talk to. His partner for 50 years is gone now. He wakes up and she's not there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and that's exactly it. So he just goes out to you know he goes out to keep himself occupied, right? But actually, one of the things I would say is this is actually in my mind, and I know that for people like you in the work that you did, you don't want to do this, But in my mind, one of the reasons why I'd like to see options open for people not to retire is that occupation, that ability to be working, often keeps people occupied. And
Well,
if
that's
your
true. What you find is
if your
when people
partner dies,
retire, a lot of them
yeah,
pick up part-time jobs, where they can interact with people a little
yeah.
bit, but also do what they want to do. Try to find that perfect balance.
And sometimes then, if your partner dies when you're in your, let's say, 30s or 40s or something, it's not so, yes, it's devastating. Absolutely it is. But long term, it's not so devastating. You're not walking around like a zombie.
Well, the lonely factor is a thing that is affecting our society today. It is a unique social problem that has not occurred before, not in the volumes we see now.
Mm,
And that is basically,
yeah.
I'll put it right down to the pill. Basically, there are not as many children being born. There's not as many families being established, and those that are very small. That
Yeah.
reduces the amount of people you have in your circle. If you have a circle of a family, there's four. If you have four children and they have spouses, then you have a circulation of people close to around you. I'm lucky. I have three sons, and they all live very close to me, so I'm good that way. So I have that connection. I don't have to something like that, but other people don't have that.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, there are less community services. There are less places where people can go for dance. How many times you ever see anybody go
That
for a dance
actually,
anymore?
that actually is a very good point, because actually pre-COVID, I was discussing this with Angela Brown over the last 3 or 4 months, quite a lot. We were talking about that. It doesn't matter what your age is, right? Irrespective of age, whether you're 20 or, or 100. Before COVID, there were a lot of places. There were meeting places, things going on, you know, events that would happen in Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Welland, wherever. And now those same events during the course of COVID, when they stopped meeting, now those events don't occur. Nobody, there's no knitting circle event anymore. There's no pottery club anymore. That sort of thing is all gone, right? We've lost
Yeah,
all of that in our
that's just,
society.
it's harder and harder to get those things. Your uh, quilting bees are probably a lot less quilting bees or knitting circles or things of that
Yeah,
kind. Simple things like that. Or
and often those,
there's less people being shooting pool nowadays.
yeah,
So you're not at a club shooting pool. And what about? I mean, when I was there was always places for me to be when I was a younger man or a middle-aged man, basically, or because I could play hockey and I could play slow pitch. For years and years and years, I
yeah.
played slow pitch. For years and years, I play hockey off and on, sometimes pickup hockey. And and well, you have friends and people that do that too, so you feel like you're all part of doing something, and until it's gone, you don't know what you got till it's gone, to
And
quote Tony Mitchell, because basically, when you get to a certain part of age, well, you're not going to be out there at the baseball doing slow pitch with your pals anymore, are you? You're
yeah,
not going to be strapping on the
yeah, yeah.
blades anymore, are you?
Well, and that whole issue about, you see, somebody, I remember as I said, I was talking about this with Angela. Somebody said, well, why don't you set up a group? Well, if you've been the type of person whereby you've said to people, hey, why don't we do X? And people say, yeah, okay, well, we'll set up a group. And you set up a group and 3 people show up, and that lasts for 3 weeks. Well, it didn't pay for itself. It didn't. You didn't build social friends out of it, and it really didn't help anything. So if you know that you're the type of person that never gathers a crowd around them, you're kind of not willing to go and to spend that time. Whereas if you're a person who you know will gather a crowd around them, maybe you would spend the time.
What else we got?
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, the Liberals are, sorry, not just Liberals, Liberal and NDP MPs are intending to travel to the West Bank.
Finally.
Pardon me?
Finally.
Basically what this is Liberal MPs Salma Zahid and Shafkat Ali, and NDP MP Heather McPherson, who happens to be the party's foreign affairs critic, have basically decided they were going to go to both the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And they're saying what we've seen in the last 3 months is that it is a humanitarian crisis, and the situation also in the West Bank has been worsening. So this is Salma Zahid, who's chair of the Canadian Palestine Parliamentary Friendship Group.
Well, notably that it looks as if the Liberal MPs that are going are of Arab descent. It's like Salma Zahid and
Salma's
Shafak
actually
Ali, and
I
those are the two Liberals, and
Yeah.
the NDP are not. And I celebrate the NDP for doing that. They've got cojones. Everybody else is frightened like a little rabbit. You can't get Trudeau, Poilievre, or Singh to come out other than saying there should be a ceasefire and then run for cover. When I put something on my Facebook, a friend of mine says, when I put something on my Facebook and it said, "Where's Trudeau, Poilievre, and Singh? Where are they? Where are their voices?" Basically, with all this disaster going on, one of my friends printed, "They're probably afraid to have an opinion," and I think that's probably it. They're very afraid to have an opinion because no matter what they're going to say, the opposite group's going to jump all over them. But in this particular case, I am very, very pleased that the NDP have had the courage to go there. NDP, with obviously they do not have family connections in the area or have a cultural connection with the area either.
Yeah. And Salma Zahid, she's been outspoken about the Palestinian issue from the Liberal perspective for weeks now.
Yes, and most of the Liberals are playing the three monkey thing. See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. Not for now, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't see a huge vocal voice. I hear that the Prime Minister has said he's asked for a ceasefire. Then he had a phone call from Netanyahu, and he's been a puppy dog ever since. And they don't accept the premise of genocide in Gaza, but clearly there are elements of what is happening in Gaza as genocidal. Maybe not the whole thing, but certainly elements of it. And he is willing to accept the premise of genocide, of European colonialism and genocide over indigenous peoples, but not exactly the same colonial story happening in the Middle East. And that gives you an idea where the power lies.
Yeah, and this is a much more important issue in my view, much more relevant, much more active issue in my view. And what basically Zahid is saying is, I think it's important that Canada be known as a peacemaker, a peace builder. So Canada should be a strong voice for ceasefire in that region to make sure that we put an end to killing of innocent Palestinian people. Right.
Quite right.
I get where she's coming from. I 100% understand exactly where she's coming from.
But there is a huge, powerful forces here. We know how powerful the Israeli lobby is in the United States. It's incredible, and it's very, very important to point this out. The Israeli lobby, not the Jewish lobby. Jews are split on this issue, just like everyone else. So it is the Israeli lobby, the one that tries to influence the government into positive outcomes for the Israeli state, not so that and in that you have and believe me, I get most of my information from people from Jewish activists like Ilan Pappé, Gideon Levy, Noam Chomsky, Katie Halbert, Norm Finkelstein. Those are all Jewish people who are calling this a genocide, right? And some of them are Israeli Jews that are calling this a genocide.
Yeah.
So because if you're
it's
afraid of being called an anti-Semite, you'd have to say, well, I'm getting my information from a Semite,
Well, it's easy. Yeah, in that regard, it's easy, for example, for a Palestinian, even a Palestinian that does not live in those affected areas, to be accusing Israel a bit of performing genocide. It's a whole heap different for a for a Israeli Jew to be saying the same thing.
Well, there's obviously elements of genocide here. I don't know if you could say it was a completely genocidal program, but there's obviously issues with genocide because of what the statements of senior officials in the government have said.
Yes, absolutely.
What the Likud parties, right in the Likud parties, the first thing in the Likud party is they want an Israeli state from the river to the sea. Now, normally when river to the sea, you associate that with a Palestinian chant. From the river to the sea, Palestinians must be free. Well, right in the Likud party, it says we want a state river to the sea and get rid of everybody that isn't Jewish. That's going to be just Jewish only state. So what does that tell you? Both are using the same idea.
All about that actual statement is about genocide.
Partly. It's a mixed bag. Some Palestinians say from the river to the sea want the Jewish state wiped out. They would be the Hamas type. The others saying river to the sea would be the ones that want equal rights for Arabs, Palestinians that are living in that area. From the river to the sea, Palestinians must be free. So Gaza Strip and the West Bank should be free of occupation. That's what most people are calling for. But the other one, with the river to the sea, from the Zionist points of view, is also is a genocidal kind of thing because they want all the Arabs out of there. You see what I mean? So it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a Zionist, they want all the Arabs out. If you're talking to somebody from Hamas, they want all the Jews out. But if you're talking to most normal people, all they want is both groups to have freedom and independence.
And both groups to coexist very often.
That's going to be tough.
Yeah. Oh, I know. All right. So I wish them well over there. I don't know exactly what they're going to achieve.
I don't know. But the fact that they're there and they had the courage to go there, and particularly you could see the ones with the two Arab names. You could see that. Okay, well, yeah, they have a cultural connection. But the NDP are not. They do not have a cultural or familial connection with the area. They don't have a religious connection with the area.
Yeah.
They are just ordinary European-based Canadians, according to their names. Now they're going there, and they're going there with open minds. But you won't see our leaders go there, because if they go there, they will no longer have plausible deniability. They will not be able to say, well, oh no, I don't know. When they go there and they look at it, they could not deny the fact that it's an apartheid system. And they don't want to go there and see that, so they have to say that. They want to be in a position where they say, well, we don't really know what's going on there. We kind of, and some sort of vague idea about we believe in a two-state solution, and then stick their head back under a pillow. But the fact of the matter is that we have MPs going there, and you notice the Congress when in the U.S. when the Congress went there, they all went to Israel after the massacre of October 7th. They all went there, and none of them went over to Ramallah and asked them what was going on. They all went to the same place. Even our politicians went to the same place and said, "Oh, it's terrible, terrible, terrible," and watch the movies about the massacre, terrible, terrible, terrible. Well, I don't see them watching too many movies about the massacres that's happening right now in genocide, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, moving on. Scientists in Iceland are planning to drill a hole into a magma chamber about a mile underground in an attempt to generate limitless energy. This is called the Krafla Magma Test Bed, and they're aiming to create the world's first research center based above a magma chamber to monitor, sample, and test molten rock in situ for the first time. So the center hopes it will be gain unprecedented insights into how volcanoes work and offers new avenues for potentially limitless geothermal energy. Right.
Well,
So it's an interesting thing, that's for sure. So magma within the earth is the last unexplored frontier, says KMT's and Ingolfsson.
well, this to me
Not
is an underreported and underdeveloped area. We are in a world that needs boundless amounts of energy, vast amounts of energy, and 11 miles below us is the magma, and it has boundless, endless energy. There is no way we could use up the heat in the center of our planet if we lived on it for another billion years. There is all kinds of heat down there that can be converted to usable energy.
And you find a magma chamber underneath a volcano, which could be well, they found this one by accident. They were drilling down from magma chamber that they expected to be 2.5 miles down, and they found an offshoot of it about a mile down.
Yes, and what that means is now that's very, very fortunate, because remember what I said, it's 11 miles down anywhere else. If we were to drill right here, we'd have to go down 11 miles. Now, obviously, you probably wouldn't have to go that far if you wanted to use up the heat of the planet underneath the magma. Obviously, you'd be able to find a way of getting maybe 7 miles or 6 miles, but still, that's an incredible engineering feat. It is staggering. However, when that magma is close, and remember, Iceland already uses a lot of geothermal heat because they're very close to where the plates. So they have two diverging plates there. They have the European plate and they have the North American plate, and they're splitting like this. They're moving like this. Instead of coming together, they're moving apart. And as they move apart, there's this constant flow of magma coming up from underneath. So they're very close to that. They always have a volcano going off once or in Iceland. And what happens is that they're very close to to geothermal heat, and they've been able to utilize it very, very well.
Well, they a large percentage of their energy, a large percentage of their heating comes from geothermal sources, and the thing about this is they're looking at using and creating effectively a research station based on geothermal energy. And what they're intending to do is they want to drill into this, but as they go forward and they drill down, they're looking at basically filling it with cold water in order to freeze the situation at the head of their drilling mechanism, so that they're intending to be that will allow them to actually understand more and drill into and obtain core samples down that low. But then that may also mean that they, unlike the 2009 thing where they encountered this magma section unexpectedly, they're now expecting it. They're going to deal with a situation, where they're going to actually, they're ready for it. they can actually manage to control the reactions, and they can utilize the heat that will come up from it.
Well, that's so you have opportunities for volcanism here, where volcanologists can learn a lot of things, and also where engineers can learn how to convert that power, which is only a mile down. And although that sounds a lot, but only a mile down, where everywhere else it's 11 miles. Now, I will tell you that although everybody knows that geothermal is down there, and everybody is looking for cleaner ways of making power, and that you can't get much cleaner than that. There is a situation happening out west, where particularly in North and South Dakota, I think, where the fracking the fracking operations are going into places that are very, very hot with their fracking drills. And what they're finding out, they're starting to understand that they could, without having to dig a big tunnel down there to access that heat, they could probably access it through measures like fracking, where they can blast open a lot of other areas there and be able to continually fill that up with water and have steam coming up and generating power. It's in its infancy right now, but that is probably the best way to do that at this particular time, because they have the technology to go very, very deep and frack open a big area. Now, if you've gone down there and you fracked out all the oil that's down there, and then you look at that, you've got probably a very porous area where it's very hot. Not a bad idea to put some water down there and get some steam. Also, you don't have to go that far to heat a house or heat an apartment building, for instance. Well, if you had enough money to go down deep enough to frack an area down there where you can access the heat of the planet, not the boiling heat, but heat enough to heat your building. So there's all kinds of possibilities that way.
Yeah, and and I think we're going to learn a lot from this. So they're looking to drill back into that magma chamber, but this time they want to stay ahead of the game. They're not going to try to pour water down it and end up with a gushing cloud of steam. And this time they want to control that steam.
Yeah. So that's I don't know. It's very interesting anyway.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so moving on. Again, we don't normally cover crime stories, but I thought this was an interesting one. And we can just finish with this one today. A Quebec man who posted conspiracy theories about online about forest fires being deliberately set by the government pleaded guilty to starting a series of fires himself.
Was he? I can't get those articles. Those are Samsung articles, so they don't. I can't read them. But okay, tell us all about it.
Well, okay. Actually, the funny thing is, these came on for Global News, and okay, so he's pleaded guilty to 13 counts of arson and 1 count of arson with disregard for human life at the courthouse in Chibougamau in Quebec. And prosecutor Marie-Philippe Charon told the court that 2 of 14 fires set by this gentleman forced the evacuation of around 500 homes in Chapay, Quebec, a small community located about 425 kilometers northwest of Quebec City. On May 31st this year, 8 p.m., the town was issued a mandatory evacuation order due to raging fires near Lake Cavan, as well as the airport fire. 2 fires that included in the charges were caused by the accused. So he's a guy who went off and caused everything.
Jerk.
Yeah. Absolute jerk. Send him down for life, will you?
A lifetime of planting trees in the northern Quebec forest, boreal forest. I think that would be a good thing for him.
Is probably that's the lesson to be done. Yeah, planting trees in northern Quebec. Yes, I get that one. Yeah.
Yes, and no mosquito nets in the spring or summer.
Yeah.
There won't be much left of them by the time we go to pick them up. Just pieces.
Yeah, you're a cruel bastard, Dave.
The mosquitoes would draw every last drop of blood off of him, and then the Wolverines would pick his bones.
Yeah. Well, the problem here is, given how much devastation there was with the Ontario and Quebec fires, I just don't understand why anybody would even contemplate doing that.
No, I don't. I don't know. There's lots of madness out there. I mean, you got people running people down with cars. You got people shooting up grocery stores. I guess when you think of a maliciousness, this guy's particular maliciousness is sort of less malicious than somebody that would shoot a bunch of people in a grocery store like it did in Buffalo. But there's lots of nuts out there, madness. I don't know what drives them, and it's not for material gain, which is the thing that bothers me the most. Like criminals, we can understand when it has to do with material gain, but when it has nothing to do with material gain, you got to wonder what the heck is driving these people.
Oh, absolutely, I do. It bothers me a lot that you've got complete idiots out there, and they're just doing things like this is just like, are you mad?
Well, sometimes it's just madness, like that guy that shot up. Was it Massachusetts? He shot, I don't know, 20 people or something, 18 people or something in a bowling alleys. Was that Massachusetts or Connecticut? I can't remember.
I think that I don't remember actually. Don't remember the location.
There's so many mass murders down there; it's hard to keep track. But there was lots and lots of warning signs for him. Lots and lots. It was Maine. There was lots and lots of warning signs. Tons and tons and tons of them.
Yeah.
All
nobody
kinds.
Paid heed. Yeah. Nobody paid.
And they were afraid. They were afraid to move on it because of their strong gun laws that prohibit anybody interfering with somebody that has a gun. So there's a guy who was mad. He lost his mind. His family told the police, "Watch out! He's going to do something." He's lost his mind. His best friend told the police, he's lost his mind, but they didn't do anything. And guess what happened?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Yeah. So, what a sad state of affairs. And as you say, the best solution is for him to be actually on the gang, planting trees for the rest of his life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Get out there and plant some trees.
At no government expense. Except for his food, of course.
Yeah.
Pay him and whip him.
Yeah, plant the trees, grow the trees.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's it. That's what should be his sentence.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everybody for being here. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Have a great freezing cold day.
Yeah, and it's snowing.